Hello and welcome. I am so excited to be here on GMAT Club's platforms to talk with you about round two applications. I know a lot of you are already going through the application preparations, and there's a lot to work on for the next 2 months before deadlines, reach us with Wharton being January 3rd. I will be talking today about the applications and how to shortlist your MBA round two applications. A part of this is also going to talk about, I'm going to focus on, how do you shortlist if you are a first-time applicant, as well as if you've applied to schools in round one and need to rethink your application process. That's something that you can definitely benefit from this session too. I invite you to also share this live or the replay of this with your friends who are also applying to business school and can benefit from knowing how to shortlist your lists of business school, of your target business school list. Just before we dive into those details, I want to briefly introduce myself. For those of you who do not know me, I am the founder of Sia Admissions. I come with a background from NYU and Yale and have been a coach for about 8 years now. Coaching highly ambitious young professionals who are looking to get admission to top 20 business schools. And the way we approach things at Sia Admissions is very much a tailored approach in terms of not only focusing on rank, but also focusing on making really that appropriate match between the applicant and the school, and then helping the applicant capture their experiences in a tailored way that showcases the authentic side, but also is in alignment with what these business schools are looking for. So I invite you, if you want to discuss your profile and how you can stand out in these applications, to have a consultation call. There's no obligations, but we do talk about your background, the school target, or the target list of schools that you are considering, even if you haven't decided yet what that list looks like, and then ways that we can support you on this very important next chapter in your career development. So let's dive right in terms of what we're going to talk about today. I will be monitoring my second screen to see if there's any questions that are coming in. So I encourage you to be very engaged participant, ask questions along the way so I can really answer as we progress in the presentation. And then once we go through it and answer questions along the way, there's also going to be a Q&A towards the end in terms of making sure, of course, that you have your questions answered in this live forum. But then, of course, I always invite you to join us to join me for a one-on-one and talk about your background and your story. So before we dive into the strategies, which I know all of you want to know, let's just step back for a moment and really talk about why business school selection is really important. Well, I think the first and foremost component is that you have a limited amount of time, right? And you want to have a list that is really genuine to you, what you want to do, but also where it allows you to actually put your best foot forward and be able to submit quality applications over just a giant list of applications. If you are a US applicant, have gone through the US application process in an undergraduate category where you have the Common App and you apply to 10 different schools, that works for undergrad, does not work for business school. So you do want to be really thoughtful in terms of how you approach your business school applications. Obviously, we're going to go through kind of what are the categories and all the things that you need to consider in the process, but you do want to make sure that you are selecting the right kind of schools. And the right kind of schools have different levels of right in terms of the selection process and why it's important. So obviously you want the quality of education and opportunities. You want to be in a room of individuals who are exciting you in terms of intellectually. You want to have the right opportunities in terms of, the area that you're interested in being involved in, the area that you're interested in moving your career towards, that you have opportunities to have exposure to those spaces, right? So if you're choosing a school that has limited amount of opportunities or classes in your area of interest, then that is a questionable or business school selection, right? In terms of why you've chosen that particular program. Of course, business school is not just about your immediate post-MBA goal. It's about the long-term plan that you're building for yourself. This is the network that will be with you for the rest of your life, that you're going to leverage as you progress and move in your career. That could be, within an industry, within the geography of the US or Europe. At least those are the areas that we focus on here, but it's true across the board. But also, if you want to have the flexibility to move to other parts of the world, that should be one of your selection criteria or refinement criteria in terms of which schools you say yes to in terms of putting an application. You also want to have by selecting the right school, you also are saying and are selecting the right kind of resources for yourself in terms of the areas that you need to develop. And obviously, I focus on T20, top 20 business schools, and I wouldn't be a genuine presentation today if I don't talk about brand. Brand does matter. It opens doors. It gives you that 15 minutes that you need to make an impression. What you do with that 15 minutes is, of course, always up to you, but the brand element does play a role in the opportunities that you are presented with. And then, of course, the return on investment. This is a long-term investment, not just the immediate post-MBA investment, right? So do keep in mind that this is going to pay dividends over a lifetime of experiences. I am a firm believer in research. Authenticity doesn't come easily. Yes, you can talk about who you are, but in terms of building a bridge between who you are, what you want, and where you want to go, and how the school fits into that play, research is an important component. And research has many different tiers in terms of how you go about research, where you get the information, but it's really important for you to understand that your research is going to allow you to identify the program offerings, the specializations, particularly if you don't have exposure to the spaces that you're looking to have exposure to. Research will allow you to determine what are the hands-on experiential learning opportunities, what the network looks like, and how strong is the network in terms of how accessible are they. Is everyone going to business school and getting a degree and never looking back, or are they really engaged in the community of the school that you are targeting? The career services play a huge role in the business school application, in the business school journey, particularly in your internship and post-MBA career. So making sure that the school that you are targeting has the resources that you need and career services support that you need, it's essential in this journey. For example, if you're looking to go into the media and entertainment space, looking at the schools in the top 20 that offer those exposures first and foremost, so placement into the media and entertainment space, and then looking at what does the career services look like within that space. Do they have specialists that know the media and entertainment industry and can help you navigate the job placement? Is of course going to make a huge difference in your ability to land your desired job. Location is really important. Perhaps less so in the M7s, but overall in the top 20 business schools, definitely location plays a huge role. And also, if you're looking between US and UK or US and European universities, you need to recognize what opportunities lead as a result of the decisions that you make. So typically, if you choose to apply to a business school in Europe, you are quintessentially saying that I'm comfortable working in Europe for the time being, because your ability to move to the US post-MBA, it's not that easy. So, choosing the right program in terms of the places, geographical geographic region that you are interested in being in, it's obviously it's going to make a huge difference on the outcome and the immediate return on investment of your MBA. Of course, long-term considerations are also important. If you are someone who is looking to be in the United States for a short period of time and plan to go back to your home country, if you're international, or just move to a different geography, making sure that you're selecting schools that have cross-border connections, global presence is obviously one of the considerations that you take into account, because the network will facilitate your international moves, and be able to use the network in your target local geography more effectively if you obviously are connected to that school from the get-go. So research is going to help you really understand what the opportunities look like, what the network looks like, so that you discern, of course, how is that particular school going to benefit you. I would strongly suggest that you approach this first and foremost pragmatically, in the sense of, black and white. Does it offer these opportunities, yes or no? And if yes, then, it moves to the next phase of your evaluation criteria. And if not, you are really, straightforward in terms of recognizing that it's not going to give you what you want, even if it's the right name of the institution, right? So really be really focused on yourself in this process as you go through your selection criteria. When we think about the business school, I sometimes hear applicants say, I really want to go to Harvard, I really want to go to Wharton, I really want to go to any one of these schools, right? And I ask the natural follow-up question, which is, why those particular schools? And oftentimes it's not about the goals that the applicant is trying to attain, but rather it's because of the prestige and what it offers for the individual, which, I am human. I come from these top-ranked schools in terms of my academic background, so I recognize the power of that. However, you don't make the long-term play effectively if all you're thinking about is that. You do need to look at what is the alignment between the school that you're targeting and your goals. How is the school going to support your goals, both short and long term? In terms of your goals, you are going to look at the resources available in terms of the leadership development. So every single one of you that is applying has to get better at something related to leadership. And I can confidently say that because we all need development in that area. But you also need sometimes development in your specific business experiences and exposures, and that is related to the goal that you have. So for example, if you are looking to work in healthcare space, well, of course, you're going to choose schools that are going to be healthcare focused. And we know an M7 that is very much healthcare focused, but there are others that are T20 in the T20 category that are really strong in the healthcare. So choosing those makes sense in terms of your goals, because it offers you not only the leadership development, but also the network of people that are in that particular space, that without the network, it becomes a very difficult conversion in terms of getting from your MBA program to the desired outcome that you're looking for. And it also is important, the culture and values in terms of, what matters to you. If you are looking for a career that is very impact focused and social, there's a social element to the school, to your goals rather, you want a school that values your values. So Yale and Berkeley Haas are some of the schools that really care about those components of business leaders. So your selection, it becomes beyond just the rank. It's really about recognizing what is it that you want, what opportunities you need, and what matters to you and finding the match between you and the school. And this is one of the ways that we help candidates go through this process of selecting the school, which is finding that good match, because your application becomes easier to write. It's more authentic. You are more excited about this entire journey if you make the right selections from the get-go. It's kind of like, if we are using an analogy, building a house. If you try to build, the tower, but there's no solid foundation, the tower will fall, right? So definitely you want to make the connection between you and the school as close to what you value, what you care about, and where you're looking to go as possible, because it will make just all the different pieces much more successful. In terms of your career support, oftentimes it feels like there is not necessarily a robust understanding of how business schools support career developments. So some of the areas that schools offer you career support are through executive coaching. So they have executive coaches on premises to help you make the moves in terms of, getting the right plan in place to move your career forward. Of course, the career services offers, job searches and placement, placement opportunities and interview preparation, resume development. You also have the clubs that offer those kinds of opportunities, and depending on which club that you are interested in joining, it will have its own nuanced way that they support the students through the career development part. Schools also offer you access to the right network, whether that's through a formal presentation in terms of, a job fair or a trek, but also in form of coffee chats and symposiums of any kind that you are part of, and the networking opportunities that you want that the school offers. I would strongly suggest that you, when you speak with students, that you are involved in that, or that you ask questions in relation to their involvement in the career services opportunities or career support opportunities that the school offers, and where they look for what's their go-to place that really has given them the strongest ROI in terms of their commitment to making the moves in the direction that they're looking to go into, right? So whether that's consulting, whether that's energy, whether that's healthcare, any one of those areas, technology, right? Especially if you're looking for non-traditional careers or non-paved careers, so like outside of consulting, finance, and outside of those two, a lot more is involved on your end to make sure that you land the right opportunity. So when you have conversations with students, alumni, even admission representatives, your understanding of what career support looks like on the ground, it's going to be important, because it also helps you not only understand if you're making the right selection in a school, but also understand how the school is going to support you, therefore being able to communicate more effectively in your applications, to demonstrate to the school that you know what the school specifically offers and how that's going to be beneficial for your career. Obviously, schools have relationships with employers, so looking at what those employer lists look like. I know you have a limited amount of details that you can find online, but you can, when you speak to students and alumni, you can look at what their experience has been with your target employer list, right? And again, all of this is in support of you making sure that you're making the right selection from the get-go, and then also making sure that you communicate effectively in your applications. I cannot say how important campus culture is in terms of your experiences. You can have an absolutely wonderful time being in the right community who has similar values to you, and how you can have a very miserable 2 years if you are in the community that does not value the things that you value. So the campus culture is really important. And I will say that if you're able to convert, you know, a offer of a to an offer of admission with a school that doesn't match your culture, that in and of itself, it's you've done a good job in terms of telling your story. But you definitely want to be evaluating the culture when you make your final selection. If at that point you still feel like you don't really match the culture, the values don't match between you and the school. To do this most effectively, you are going to need to have many conversations with students, with alumni, to understand what the culture feels like. You're going to hear a lot of buzzwords, which I know you all complain about. And that's part of analyzing your experiences and your conversations with people, is to really look at what is being said and what is being said under the tone of what they're saying, or under the words of what they're actually saying. So an analysis and evaluation of your conversations is going to be really important. Culture and values, you're not going to be able to find anything online. So if you don't do this part, which is having one-on-one conversations, whether in person, online, or over the phone, you are going to miss out on seeing what the culture values are in the school that go deeper than just the superficial, jargon that you hear people talk about in terms of the culture of the school. Pay attention to the patterns. So when you have conversations with people, you're going to obviously have conversations with individuals that are in the space you want to be in. So if you want to be in healthcare, you should be talking to people in healthcare. And recognize that those individuals are representative of the school in that particular area that you are interested in being a part of. So if you don't connect with them, if you feel like this is not really, like, I wouldn't want to be their friend, then that's not the right place for you. But if you are excited about what they're talking about, you feel that there's a good energy between you and the person, and you see this consistently, not just with one person, but with a few people that you talk to, then that's a good sign that there is a cultural match in terms of you and the school that you are looking to target. You are comparing programs, but in all honesty, when you're making your selection initially, you should be applying to 5 to 6 different schools, because you are already hearing just the amount of applicants that are applying to business school these years, given the employment and what it all looks like, which means that obviously the competition is going to be greater than in more sort of like quieter years. So applying to 5 to 6 schools is definitely an important component in this process. And then trust your gut feelings at the end. I'm a proponent of trusting your own intuition in this process, but your intuition you can't make your decision solely on intuition. You're going to do a lot of research and then make your final call with a little bit of help of your intuition as well. So you want to then, once you've done your research, then you're looking at having a balanced list. So if all you're thinking about is, I only want to apply to Harvard, Stanford, and Wharton, then obviously your probability of converting is going to be drastically diminished. There's few people where I recommend that to be the list, but definitely expanding the list is going to be important. Now, the list should be, the list should be something from like reach schools, which is like, I know I'm below the class average. I know that this is, this is my dream school. I really want to go. I know I don't exactly match, but I want to try anyways, because if I don't put an application in, no one's going to knock on my door. To the target list, where there is a good match culturally, a good match in values. I look very similar to their average class, so there is a higher probability of getting in. And then the safety school, where I would say yes if nothing else is available. I'm still excited about the school, but I am above their class average in terms of their profile. And that is a balanced list of schools. Typically, I recommend that you have at least one safety school, and you're going to put the most of your list in the target, and then at least one or two maximum reach schools, just to make sure that obviously you are really trying to get the best that you can for yourself in terms of your career progression. Balance, obviously, ambition and pragmatism. So if, like I mentioned, if all you do is focus on the best of the best schools, then the question that I would ask if I would have a conversation with you would be, how much do you want this business school degree? How much do you want the career that you want to go into? Is it only dependent on your ability to get to these schools? And that's an important question, because sometimes our ego dictates that we do something in a certain way, but the reality is you can get there with other programs equally, and sometimes you can have an even better experience than you would at the quintessential Holy Trinity category. Obviously, the balanced list should be you're assessing your competitiveness. So if you're an overrepresented candidate, that's going to be a component of your evaluation process in your, where a school falls. And then if you have applied to round one and haven't gotten the results that you're looking for, then you want to reassess what did you do in terms of which schools did you apply to and what was the problem, right? Because sometimes your presentation is the problem and not the school selection in terms of what the numbers look like. So then do I need to reassess how I'm presenting myself? And then obviously still continue to put your applications towards, that reach, target, and safety category for round two. School selection, in terms of like how you should be making your school selection, what should be there. I always say this to everyone I work with: don't undervalue yourself first and foremost. Don't not put an application in just because it's difficult, because you don't know if they will say yes. Provided, of course, that you are putting in the effort that is required to present your best candidacy to that school. But also you really want to make sure that you have this wide range of schools that you are applying to, not only M7s. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are a few exceptions. If you are leaving a highly coveted industry, where I'm thinking like private equity, and the value of an MBA beyond the M7s may not be as prevalent, then in those situations, obviously it makes sense. But you definitely want to be mindful in terms of not just looking for only the best of the best, and then I won't try other than that, right? Because you can get to where you want to go. Sometimes I see applicants want to try 1 year and then reapply again next year. I highly discourage that, because getting a rejection, no matter how prepared you are for it, it's really hard. It's really hard to go through it. So I always recommend that you put in an application when you're at your best, in terms of you have the time to present your best case, you have the time to study for the GMAT or the GRE, and obviously put together a really strong application in the presentation of your application. So look at the wide range of lists, not only M7s. Obviously, a few M7s, it's normal. Everyone should be targeting a few M7s. That makes sense. But then also, T20 are some amazing schools and programs that have amazing offerings that you can still get to where you want to go with their support. Then you want to compare demographics and class metrics so that when you're selecting them, you go through those 3 categories that I mentioned earlier, where like don't only put in everything in the reach category. You do want to have a balanced list. You're going to evaluate the career alignment. So in terms of what the opportunities they offer, you've already done the research. Now it's time to evaluate between schools which one is stronger in the areas that you're looking to go into, whether that is a functional strength, meaning you're going to have a career in a particular function and that school is really strong with that, or sector strength in terms of the exposure to that particular sector you're interested in. And then, of course, select schools that match your culture, like and your value system. That is going to be, the highest indicator of your ability to succeed. Of course, provided again that you're putting together a strong application. But if you do that and you do it effectively, and then put in the time to demonstrate to the school that you fit their culture, the outcomes obviously are part of that. Positive outcomes do come from the authenticity and the cultural match. In terms of how you should be using this shortlist, I would say that you want to, again, when you're making this selection, be really strategic in terms of what you're saying yes to, and making sure that you're putting in the efforts necessary to demonstrate why they should say yes to you, right? And then how are they going to give you the resources you need? Because it's a match on both ends. You have to bring something to the classroom in terms of your experiences, your contributions, and they also have to be able to give you something, because obviously you wouldn't be going to business school otherwise. You want to share your experiences in specific details. Remember that applications to these top-ranked business schools are way more than there is actual seats, and they're not going to spend time reading your application and analyzing what you're trying to say. They're going to take everything you included at face value. So if you're not being specific, they're going to say you haven't thought enough about your application. Therefore, here's this other person who has put in a lot of effort in communicating exactly what they mean, and it matches what we care about. Therefore, we will invite this person to an interview, versus someone who only speaks in superficial, high-level materials, and it hasn't really taken the time to communicate what their values are, what they bring to the table, how they engage with other people, which are obviously all parts of your MBA journey and experience. Now, sometimes it's you have a community of people who are around you, have done this process, and can be of support to you. And I would say definitely leverage. No one succeeds alone. You have to remember that. You need to bounce ideas. You need to talk through how you're thinking about the application, what your evaluations have been. But there are others who haven't had that kind of community of support, are going through this for the first time, have non-traditional backgrounds, or are overrepresented, that really need that one-on-one attention in terms of really, spending the time with an expert who has gone through this process and can help them navigate in storytelling, in differentiating themselves from the next person who has a very similar background, right, to them. And consider working with a coach in terms of finding the right person for you, whoever that person is, and make sure that you get what it is that you need in terms of the level of support that you are looking for. Okay, I've been talking for 33 minutes nonstop. So I want to pause the presentation and move into questions that you have for me. So please write your questions in the comments of any platform you're joining us. I will be seeing them on my end here, and I'll be glad to answer any components any areas that you're looking to discuss in terms of your MBA application, whether that's, how should I think about the school? What's the school? What is the best school for these kinds of industries, etc. Oh, I see questions that have come in. Okay. There's some that I don't speak the language, so I don't know what the question is. So there is a question that has come in that says, does INSEAD consider an applicant with 20 years of work experience, which all one-year full-time programs should? So with 20 years of work experience for the full-time MBA program, it's a little bit over the average. They do have the executive MBA at INSEAD that you may be moved into considering. Now, it depends on why you want a full-time program versus an executive program. And that would depend on then how you tell the story. But typically schools that do have the executive MBA program will push you towards that program with 20 years of work experience. If you are in the 14th category, then it's a different story. But 20 is definitely on the higher end for full-time because you are way above the experience level of your peer group that you personally may not be getting a lot from the conversations of those who have, on average 5 to 6 years of work experience, right? The level of experience and exposure is very different. So it says here, while making the business school selection, we need to take care. We need to take care. I'm going to rephrase the question. We need to take care that we need to understand the course curriculum and how it aligns with the post-MBA. Is that the right approach? Yes, that is correct. Yes. It's not just the curriculum, however. So I don't want you to think about MBA programs as a quintessential traditional degree. This is a business degree where there's 3 different categories of exposure that you need to be considering. First exposure is the academics. Obviously, it's an academic institution. So academics is one. The second one is hands-on experiences. So where you get to take what you've learned in the classroom and apply it to a real world scenario. And then it's the network. So network is your peer group, but also network beyond the peer group, which would be the alumni, the industry experts in your area that you care about. So the alignment in terms of business school selection must fit all 3 categories. You should be having opportunities in all 3 to make sure that you are choosing the right programs. How is safety school defined? Is it just being above average? In most situations, yes, because you're still evaluating, making sure that you are selecting the right school in terms of your career progression. So even before it's a safety category, you're looking at the school that matches what you want to do. So it has the opportunities that you want in the sector that you want, in the industry that you want. And then from there, it's like, where do you fall? Where do you stack up in terms of the class profile? Are you above average or below average? But that first criteria of selection, even before you make it a safety, is, does it match what you need? Because obviously you're not going to spend 200,000+ USD for US your institutions to just attend any business school, right? It wouldn't be a wise investment decision. Excellent question. So do schools in college towns or smaller class size consider fit more closely? Absolutely. That they are putting together a very curated class, which means the fit is a more important component. So like think about Tuck. They really want to make sure that you fit the Tuck culture. Think about MIT. The class is really small. It's like 250 students. Compare that to close to 1,000 at HBS, right? The culture is a really important part of the selection criteria for MIT, right? So absolutely, you're spot on with that. Is a Mongolian working at the International Finance Institute considered overrepresented? I would say I think the Mongolian component, I don't see many applicants coming from that background. So that can be an interesting angle in terms of your ability to contribute to the classroom, even though you are working for IFI, which obviously is an international organization. So I would really focus on making sure what your experiences have been that bring a unique perspective to the classroom that you want to make sure that you are communicating to them. What about 10 years of work experience? Is it also considered too experienced? 10 years of work experience, you are on the cusp. I would say anyone that has 10 years of work experience should really be taking the time to put together a really strong application, because moving beyond that becomes much more challenging in terms of your ability to convert to an offer of admission, because all the schools are going to try to move you to the equivalent or the executive or the equivalent of the executive MBA. So I would say if you have 10 years of work experience, you'd want to really make sure that you leverage this year's application submissions. Okay, so there's a question on how to research the right schools. Absolutely. So I can talk a little bit more on how to do this, but essentially you first and foremost want to make sure that you have your authentic goals in place, short and long term. What do you want to do? Be as specific as you can, including finding what kind of job would you want to hold? What's the function you would have? What sector you would want to be working for? And who are the employers, right? If you can be that details, that's even perfect. Then all you're doing is plug and play. What are the skills that you need? How is the school going to offer you? And then you do this. First, you should be looking at what are the skills that you need that you don't have. Because if you're doing it in parallel, then obviously you're going to be influenced by the marketing of the school, which I don't recommend that you do in your selection process. Once you identify what specifically you want, then you can go to the school's websites as a starting point to look at the employment reports, to look at the program offerings, the concentrations, the pathways, depending on what school calls what. And that would be your starting point. And then from there, you have more detailed conversations with specific questions from students, alumni, admission representatives, attend their events, and you're constantly filling your spreadsheet, if you're creating a spreadsheet, with details in terms of in what way each one of the programs that you're considering is helping fill the experiences that you're looking for in terms of getting you to your short and long-term goals. Hopefully that helps. So there's so someone here is saying, top 100 universities, it's way too large of a list. So I would if your list is that large, you want to really narrow down what you want to do in terms of your goals, and then look at there's a lot of online articles that talk about schools. These are the right schools for this kind of background, and then that can help you at least place yourself on the map, because 100 schools is absolutely too large. Even 20 is too large, and not 100. Okay, I'm not sure what questions I have been ignoring. Oh, general management. Okay. Best schools for general management. Best school is Harvard for general management. I would. I don't know if the question is too vague, because it's not really like general management and what where do you want to go? What's the goal that you want to have? So if you can provide a lot more details on that, then I can give you more specific answer. Do you think that European, Italian in general are overrepresented in the US MBA? Not so much. I wouldn't consider overrepresented, but if you're coming from an engineering background, then yes, that's kind of falls into a different category of overrepresented. But generally, I wouldn't consider you an overrepresented candidate. Not sure I understand this question. It says, so I don't miss any selection chances in the one go. What's the 100%? I don't, maybe you can rewrite the question. Hopefully you are still watching. I don't understand what the question is. So if you rewrite the question, I'll be happy to answer. Aren't MSX and Sloan Fellows MBA one-year full-time programs? Please suggest other similar programs. So yes, Stanford, MIT, and LBS offer the Masters in Business for 10 years, for those with 10 years of work experience. So those are obviously the, they kind of fall into this middle management category of applicants. But then there's, outside of those, you're going to have the executive MBAs that fall into that category. So Wharton has an executive and global MBA. Booth has one. So you look at all of the top programs in that category that offer executive MBAs. But if you are, with the exception of these schools, so Stanford and MIT in the United States, the one-year program allows you to actually attend full-time the program, whereas executive MBAs are much more, you are going to be wherever you are geographically and attend school part-time, which means the sponsorship for visa is not going to be there if that's what you need. So in those situations, a full-time program makes a lot of sense. And you would obviously, communicate that in your application. Okay. How much weight is placed in different aspects? LORs, GRE, GPA, work experience, and extracurricular stuff. The application, I'm going to use the words that I know you all hate, the word holistic, but it is a holistic application. Yes, the GPA and the GRE or GMAT, you want to be really balanced in terms of being close to the average, but if you don't match those, it's not the end of the world. Your experiences do matter because that's really what you are bringing to the classroom in terms of your ability to contribute. So if you're if you have a low GPA or even a high GPA, average GRE, but your work experience hasn't been for brands that are, global, and you're an international applicant, you're going to have a harder time converting because they will say it's going to be more difficult for them to be able to place you. So it does really balance things out across the board, but you do need to make sure that you communicate how you're going to bring value to the classroom. So I'm not sure I'm fully answering the question in terms of weighting, but know that no part should be not paid attention to in the application. Obviously, your GPA, you can't do anything about it, but in terms of what you do of your test scores, if you take extra classes to strengthen your GPA or bring up the presentation of your GPA, then obviously you should do that. So is INSEAD's business school best fit for general management role with 5 years of work experience? INSEAD, it's a good general management school, but they do also have I personally really like INSEAD generally for general management as well as more specialized careers. It has an amazing network of people, obviously amazing resources, 5 years of work experience. I would say that should work. look at the class profile and where you fall in terms of the years of work experience. I think theirs is a little bit, maybe slightly older, but so long as your experiences are strong, you should be able to, present a strong, obviously, candidacy for them. But they do, it's a good general management, but they also are interested in people who have international experience and exposure. So make sure that you are communicating that in terms of what your past has been, but also in terms of what your future will look like. How many months should we spend on school application? So you're looking at okay, so I always get this question, and I always feel like I disappoint you guys. You are typically managing work, sometimes tests and applications, which means you're not necessarily measuring in time like a full-time job. I would say also, even if I tell you a number of amount of time, it doesn't mean that your application specifically is ready or it needs that amount of time. So whether you may need less time, you may need more time. When it comes to application crafting, is not the approach should be, I'm going to work in phases in the development. So your first job is to make sure that your experiences are communicated in a way that it captures the foundationals, the foundation of what you're trying to communicate, right? So it captures my impact, it captures my leadership, it captures the story the way I want it to be told. And then from there, it's about being really more specific and elevate your responses. And typically they're not happening at the same time. So you can't sit and say, oh, I will need, 1 week to develop my essays or resume. To be honest, it takes longer than that to develop a strong application in terms of needing your ability to concentrate for that amount of time and your ability to really put together the content that you need. So I typically think of, you want to give yourself at least 2 months, and that's a rushed application of preparation time. Ideally, if you have 6 months, that's the sweet spot, right? If you are developing your profile, then you need more than that, of course. Which business school is advisable to develop a career related to sustainability and strategy? IC and HEC in my space, am I right? Yeah, those, I would say that would probably be in the Europe category. I would also look at Said, Oxford Said. That is a good school to consider. In the US, I would look at Berkeley Haas. I would look at Yale SOM as potential schools to consider. I don't know what geography you're focusing on specifically, but two sides of the schools that at least I am familiar with. Caribbean candidates, are they considered overrepresented? I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say that you would be considered overrepresented, but again, it's just one data point in the whole spectrum of data points that you're presenting to the admission team. Okay. How should one position their application strategy if they're only starting with round 2 and maybe round 3? Excellent. So I highly discourage applicants to apply in round 3 because the probability of getting in is very limited given that most of the class is already filled by that time. So in terms of your application, you have 2 months to apply this year. And depending on how many, I think you mentioned earlier, but I'm sorry, I'm not keeping track of who's saying what, who's asking what, but if you have the ability to apply next year, I would apply in round 1 and really build your full application. But if you need to apply this year, I would strongly put your full applications, all of those in the next 2 months, and obviously, target all in round 2. If you need scholarship, there is almost no scholarship available by round 3. So in all sense, it makes sense to apply in up to round 2. Is it possible to convert to a part-time once you have been accepted to a full-time candidate? Yeah, I think you have to put in an application, but I know stories of people who have been able to make the conversion. But speak with the admission team there and communicate, like, why are you making the switch? I see the same question, therefore I need... I still don't understand what does... sorry, a lot. Okay, here it is. I still don't understand what is 100%. What's the 100% in this application? Like 100% guarantee admission? Is that what the question is? If that's the question, there is no guarantee. Obviously, if you're a strong candidate and are applying to schools where you are above the class average, there will be high probability of getting in. So that would be the safety category. But I would really be selective in terms of, like, what do you want to do, and then finding schools that are in alignment with that. Where you stack up in terms of class profile, it will be dependent on, obviously, the schools that you are looking to apply to. As an Indian male engineer working in finance, how do I make my application stand out? I know this is an overrepresented group, and that is making me nervous. Absolutely. Yes, unfortunately, you are an overrepresented applicant. And I would say, this is something that we focus on in terms of the applicants that we work with. Those that are overrepresented, there's a lot of time spent on digging deep into the experiences and communicating those experiences in a way that showcases how you think differently than the next male engineer working in finance will look like. So, diving deeper into your experience is going to be important. I would suggest that you work with someone that's professional in this space that can help you tell that story, because it's hard no matter where you're coming from. It's hard to tell your own story because you have the full spectrum of all of your experiences that you have stored in your memory. And what you think is important may not be what the business school thinks it's important. So working with someone who has seen this time and again and has been successful in this process can be really helpful for you. So what schools in the US could help with product management, sports tech, and or general management and strategy? I think general management and strategy is across the board relatively okay. Top 20 business schools. In terms of sports tech, you're going to want to look at schools that have, like, the entertainment category as strong connections too. So think UCLA Anderson, think Marshall, think NYU Stern. These are schools that will have the entertainment connections, the network that you need, and obviously they fit in the other categories as well. So look at the sort of like the sector that is in and of itself a difficult sector to enter, and then look at schools that have those opportunities for you, because obviously you'll need the most support possible to make the conversion. Okay. We're getting to the end. Okay. So how will Caribbean work experience be viewed at a top 20 MBA program, given that I may not have worked for a global brand that is easily recognizable? Is that a negative for my application? I would say that, I've helped applicants who have been able to successfully get into T20, M7, Holy three with non-branded institutions, but the element that has been helpful for their application has been in telling their story and their experiences in a way that captures how differentiated they are as a candidate. So my recommendation for you is focus on how you're telling your story, how you're speaking about your experiences, and what value do your experiences bring to the MBA classroom that's different from the ones that are coming in with the brand. Emory is known as a consulting school, so that's reflected in the employment placement. Round one versus round two admission chances. All things equal in terms of strong applications. Presenting your story strong, equally strong, test scores. Round one will give you higher chances of getting in and higher probability of scholarship. And the last question is, how do schools view switching to a new job 1 to 2 months before the application if the move aligns with my career goals? 1 to 2 months before the application submission, it's actually not a lot of time. If it makes sense in terms of your career goals, that may not necessarily be viewed as negative, but at that point, you are not really being able to leverage that experience at all in the application, in the sense that you won't have, you wouldn't have been able to make any contributions in 1 to 2 months, given that you are still learning the business, learning the space, right? So your ability to leverage that change is not going to be as effective in your application, but the fact that you made the move may not negatively impact your application either. Excellent. Well, thank you for the wonderful questions. And I am really excited for your round two applications. If you want to discuss your candidacy and ways that we can help you here at Sia Admissions, I invite you to schedule a free one-on-one call to discuss your plans, your areas that you need support with, and we can move the discussion from there. Go to our website, siaadmissions.com, and there is a free consultation button that you will see there that you can book a call for a 30-minute call, for a 30-minute discussion. Thank you again, and I will see you soon.